We are back live with Dr. Michio Kaku, physicist and author, talking with him on BookTV's In-Depth program. We'll put the numbers back up on the screen in case you'd like to call in and talk with him. 202 is the area code. 737-0001 for those in the East and Central time zones, 737-0002, Mountain and Pacific time zones. Email at booktv@cspan.org. I should tell you, though, we've got stacks of email right now, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to get through a tenth of what we've got. So it might be a little late to get in. Dr. Kaku, why Isaac Asimov?
Isaac Asimov is one of my favorite science fiction writers because he blew my mind away when I was a teenager. Usually in science fiction, it's science opera, space opera. You go to outer space, shoot up the aliens, get the girl, and end of story. That's it, right? Well, when I read the Foundation series, I said to myself one word: wow! You are now tens of thousands of years in the future, where humanity has colonized not just a few nearby stars, but so much of the galaxy that humanity has forgotten where the Earth is. Earth itself is somewhere in the backwash of ancient history, and the empire is dying. This galactic empire is dying. And then there was an attempt by some of the scientists there to predict the future, to use mathematics to predict the sequence of events into the future. So I said to myself, wow, I mean, think about this. A galactic civilization, civilizations that have spread across the galaxy, using the power of mathematics to predict what inventions, what political developments, how human behavior will evolve, because there's so many of us. Trillions of us. You can predict the behavior of trillions of atoms. You cannot predict the behavior of 5 atoms, but you can very well predict the behavior of trillions of atoms. So he applied that basic philosophy to humankind itself. Now, that was also important for me, because so many of my colleagues laugh when they think about intelligent life in outer space. They say, ha, 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 how can they possibly reach the Earth? Stars are so far away. But that assumes that alien life in space is only 100 years ahead of us. Then you're right. You have every right to laugh and snicker, because intelligent beings 100 years from now are not going to be able to go rocketing across the star systems. However, now imagine a civilization 1,000 years ahead of us, 1,000,000 years ahead of us. That's just a blink of an eye with regards to the age of the universe, which is 13.7 billion years. Then new laws of physics begin to open up, new possibilities. So we can't simply laugh at other people's opinions about intelligent life in outer space, because you cannot assume that intelligent life in outer space is only 100 years ahead of us. That's a type 1 civilization. What happens if they're type 3? Galactic, maybe 100,000 years ahead of us. And that's why I think that we scientists have to keep an open mind. And now, of course, we are finding evidence of planets out there in outer space that are just like the Earth. And one day, maybe we'll make contact with one of them.
Why is the speed of light the limit? Is it because we can't detect anything faster? That's Michael Glenn O'Grady in Encinitas, California.
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I would get a whole shelf full of Nobel Prizes. It's one of the basic laws of the universe. The speed of light is a constant in all inertial frames. Whether light comes toward you or whether light is moving away from you, it always travels at the same velocity. Now that violates common sense. If a rock goes toward you, away from you at different angles, rocks travel different velocities with regards to where you are. But no matter how you measure a light beam, it's always traveling at the same speed of light. That means that space and time have to be distorted so that the speed of light is a constant in all inertial frames. Now, why? Why is that true? Why is Einstein the cop on the block saying you cannot break the light barrier? And the basic answer is we don't know. It's just one of the big laws of the universe. Now, Einstein was led to this, by the way, when he was 16 years old. When he was 16 years old, he had a thought experiment. If you're racing alongside a light beam, the light beam should be stationary. Just like when you race next to a speeding car, you can look at the driver, wave to the driver as if you're neck and neck and you're stationary. So he thought to himself when he was 16, if you're racing a light beam, the light beam should be frozen. It should be at rest. But frozen light, he said to himself, doesn't exist. No one has ever seen frozen light before. Therefore, you cannot race faster than light because there's no such thing as stationary light beams. Well, he was right on the mark. When he was 26 years old, 10 years later, he finally learned the mathematics of James Clerk Maxwell, which allowed him to solve the problem once and for all. Why is it true? We don't really know. It's just one of the fundamental laws of the universe.
Dr. Cuthbert Simpkins emails in, isn't time an artifact? Isn't the harmonic oscillator a misleading model even though it gives correct answers?
Well, I get emails sometimes from people who say that time is a fiction. Time doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Well, maybe, but without time, there's no change. Everything changes in our world. So if time didn't exist, nothing would change. So there would be no world as we know it. Now, the progression of time can play tricks on you. For example, I host specials for BBC television sometime, and we all have the illusion that in a car accident, time slows down. So we did an experiment. We got this guy, gave him a stopwatch and a camera, and we pushed him backwards off a tower. Now, if you're pushed backwards off a tower, you go screaming because you think you're going to die. Well, we had him look at images flashed at him. These images flash so fast that the ordinary eye can't see it, like a number flashed at him. When we pushed him backwards, he saw the number because time slowed down as you're falling backwards. So you can actually measure this effect, measure the effect that the progression of time slows down when you're frightened, when you're in a panic mode. The progression of time does change. That doesn't mean that time has changed. It just means that your neural circuits speed up, so you process information faster. You can see numbers which flash across the screen, which normally are too fleeting to be seen.
Next call for Dr. Michio Kaku comes from New York City. David, hi.
Hi. I don't know if anyone has said this to you, Peter, but you've been doing in-depth now for I don't know how long, but I know you're doing a great job, and I think someone should say it to you, so I'm saying it.
Okay.
As far as the professor goes, I happen to teach psychology at CUNY, what used to be downtown city, Baruch College. My name is David Chowes, and I agree with you. You mentioned at the end of the Cold War, and that has slowed down what's being found in the, or has lowered the amount of funds given to scientists. I think that's true, and I think a bigger problem is the fact that people who are exposed to science, whether it be in junior, senior, high school, or in college, are taught the applied facts of science, but they are not, there is no emphasis on what science is. Very briefly, I'll ask you a second question. They talk about alternative science, especially alternative medicine and therapies. They're really not, I'm asking you, it's not really science. It's not science until it's validated to a particular probability. Would you please comment?
Well, you ask about the philosophy of science, so let's try to, break it down. The way science is taught, there are many ways of approaching the way science is taught, but I think science is taught the wrong way. First of all, we are all born scientists. We're born that way. We're born wondering why the sun shines, where we came from, where did the earth come from. We're born that way. Then we hit high school, and then it's crushed out of us. Any germ of curiosity comes up against this huge barrier as we begin to study exams and learn rote memorization, learn the parts of a body and the flower. And it's a miracle that any of us can survive that process, because that's the way science is taught. Science is taught as basic memorization. For example, Richard Feynman, the Nobel laureate, when he was growing up as a child in Queens, he tells this story. his father would take him into the forest, and the father would point out birds to him and explain why the coloration was the way it is, the shape of the beak, the way they flew, their mating habits, all the behaviors and the physical characteristics of birds explained by the father. Then one day a bully comes up to the future Nobel laureate and says, "Hey Dick, what's the name of that bird over there?" And then the young Feynman realized that, hey, he could tell the bully everything about that bird except one thing, its name. So he said, "Well, I don't know." And then the bully said, "What's the matter, Dick? You stupid or something?" And in that instant, he suddenly realized the difference between the appearance of science and real science. The appearance of science is giving names to things, learned names for simple objects, but that's not science. Science explains where it came from, how it evolved, why it is the way it is, and that's not the way we teach science. And as a consequence, I think it's no wonder that so many of our kids realize that this is boring stuff. It's stuff they have to learn, but it's stuff that really is of no relevance to their lives, which I think is really a problem. And then you mentioned the Cold War. Yes, during the Cold War, scientists did benefit. And in fact, Sputnik of 1957, I still remember the shock waves that went out when Sputnik went up in orbit. It was your patriotic duty to become a scientist, an engineer, or what have you. It was your duty because America was being threatened by the Russians. People thought that hydrogen bombs would be raining from outer space with Sputnik. So it was glamorous. It was the thing to do. Now, it's all gone. There's no sense of urgency. And our competitors, however, they know their meal ticket is going to be science and technology. They're not stupid. They're sending their finest minds to America to learn science. We benefit from that. But then now China wants them back. And China is luring them back by promising them being head of industry and being heads of laboratories. So our scientific establishment is under threat. It's under threat, not under the attack of the Russians. It's under threat by our complacency, that we don't understand why we have all this riches and all this riches of technology. It's because of science. It could just as easily dissipate as well as come.
When you wrote Visions in the 1990s, it got a New York Times, it was reviewed in the New York Times and considered by one reviewer as infotainment. Has it held up in what you predict?
Yeah, I predicted out to the next 20, 30 years, and we're right on schedule. Read that book. What will a computer look like? What will medicine, what are the breakthroughs going to be? And then people come and ask me, how come your book predicted it right on the button, year by year, decade by decade? And the answer is, I cheated. I get to interview all the leading scientists. My radio show goes out to 130 radio stations across the United States. I do things for BBC, Discovery Channel, Science Channel. I get to take a film crew right into the laboratory and show the advances in DNA, show the advances in computer technologies and lasers that are going to change our world. I get a front row seat to see the future. So I know these technologies are going to ripple through because A, they already exist. B, some of the finest minds are pushing it, and C, it's only a matter of time before somebody commercializes these technologies. And now my next book, as I mentioned, Physics of the Future, will be even more ambitious, talking about the next 100 years. Now, some people say you can't go that far. But remember that Jules Verne in 1860, when Abraham Lincoln was mired in the Civil War and we had horse-drawn carriages, realized that Jules Verne predicted Paris in the year 19